All right, man. So the draft is less than 2 weeks away. It's about 12, 11 days now. Might be even less by the time this video comes out. But we've spent like the last 2 to 3 months just arguing on Twitter or social media in general about who the Falcons should take. Should we trade back, trade up? Like, what should we do? It's been Micah Parsons, Trey Hendrickson. Who else? It's been like a lot of people to come available to where it's like, are we going to use our draft picks to trade for somebody, or are we going to use these draft picks to build the team? So it's been a long 2 to 3 months in this offseason, and I'm ready to do my official mock draft because I've sat back and I've observed everything. I've listened to everybody, argue with people over prospects, and as for somebody who's had, this is my first draft cycle where I'm paying attention to prospects because I haven't been into college football until the last 2 seasons, and I ain't gonna lie, it's a terrible introduction to be introduced to college football by Georgia fans because, oh my God, some of y'all are terrible. And some of these Georgia fans, they just go so far to hype their guys up to where they're just shitting on everybody else because they didn't play in the black and red. Like, oh my God. So the site I'm using, I think I'm using ESPN. I've used like 3 or 4 different sites for mock drafts over the past few months, and I think I like this one the most. And this is my first time using it. It's not like that one site where it's impossible to trade, but it's also not like the other one. Well, it's similar to the one where it's like a little trade meter at the bottom to see if they'll accept it or deny it, right? It's kind of like that, but yeah, let's go and get on into it. So how I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna just go over like some of the important thing or some of the important prospects. So like if a team takes an important prospect that I had on my board, I'm gonna highlight it, and also gonna just go over like some of the important things or things that I think that was notable. But I'm also gonna go over the people that we drafted, right? So for the first round, like I said, we pick at 15. Nothing really eventful happened except Jalen Walker. He went at number 6, right? And I know Jalen Walker was on everybody's boards. A lot of people like Jalen Walker, but recently he's been climbing up for some reason. At first, he was projected to be around where we are picking, but all of a sudden, it's just been like, wait, could he creep into the top 5, top 10? And sure enough, he goes number 6. The Panthers, they take Mason Graham. I was really high on Mason Graham. I knew he wasn't gonna fall to 15, but it was just like I really like him as a player and as a prospect. So kind of sucks that we see a good player go to a team that's in the division, so we got to play him twice a week. But as a result of that, Ted McMillan, he falls pretty much out of the top 10 almost, and he falls to, you guessed it, New Orleans. So we got to deal with him and Chris Olave for 2 years if this were to come true, obviously. And I think really them taking Ted was really worthy of, going over because the Saints, they're in an interesting position. They probably moving on from Derek Carr next season, and they probably need as many weapons as possible for their new quarterback that they're going to bring in next year, which I really thought they would have taken Shador at 9, which that's what it looks like is going to happen at the moment. So we're going to look out for that. But then we get to pick 15, and so at 15, the top 5 that I had available was James Pierce Jr., Michael Williams, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, and Jahad Campbell. And you're probably thinking, why are you listening to Shamar Stewart? Well, I initially did not like Shamar Stewart because of the production thing, but then once I had to get talked into it. I'm not saying that I'm lobbying for them to pick Shamar Stewart, but I would not get mad like I initially would have, because essentially he was in the Jimmy Lake situation where his defensive coordinator had him playing out of position. You see him, he's a 6'6", 290-pound, damn near 300-pound grown man, and he's playing a 4-3 edge, I think. Well, he's playing some 4-eye. He's playing in some odd fronts, literally and figuratively. But I think if we were to draft him, we would move him inside and play defensive end, similar to what we did with Zach Harrison, because Zach Harrison is about the same size, just a little bit less as far as weight. They're both about 6'6", 6'7". Yeah, man. So I think if we were to take Shamar Stewart, we would move him inside. Jahad Campbell, I like him a lot. Now, I'm actually glad Jalen Walker is gone in this situation because it would be between those two, and it's a lot of argument between Jahad Campbell and Jalen Walker because they do some of the same things. But I think it really just stems from the rivalry between Georgia and Alabama. Like, it's like, oh, my guy's better, no, your guy's better. And they just do the same thing, bro. The only thing, in my opinion, is that Jahad, he's a way better coverage guy, so that would make me favor him more over Jalen Walker. But That's besides the point. Mykel Williams, he'll be in a similar situation as Shamar Stewart. Really big. I don't think he would be a outside linebacker in this situation because he's an edge. He's a bigger guy, right? So he would have to move to defensive end and kick inside to play with us because I don't think we're going to move to a 4-3 team. I think we're going to stay 3-4 because Raheem Morris still has influence over this defense. And then James Pierce Jr., he is still available. And I really like James Pierce Jr. because I think he has I think he's just the safest pick for us at this moment. But outside of that, Mike Green, love Mike Green too. But I think that we don't pick him because they prioritize length. And also, I think him being in the Sun Belt is going to actually hurt him a little bit. Cool thing, I got to see him play against Georgia Southern. He didn't do shit except to get a sack. But, that's besides the thing. We know we beat him. Hell Southern. But, yeah. So what I actually do for pick 15, I'm going to trade back. I trade back with the Seattle Seahawks. So we go from 15 to 18. And that was a very strategic trade back because I wanted to trade back right before we get to Tampa Bay. Because if we trade back behind Tampa Bay, they might take somebody that we want. So I was like, let's go one pick ahead of them. So we trade back to 18 and we also get pick 82 and pick 137. And so after that, once we made that trade back, Jahad Campbell went to Cincinnati at 17, which is right before us, which would have been perfect for us at that moment. But I'm not really mad at that. So at pick 18, my top 5 is pretty much still the same, except we just add one guy. So you got James Pierce Jr., Mykel Williams, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, and then Nick out of South Carolina, the safety. I don't know how to say his last name, so I'm not going to butcher. I'm just going to call him Nick. So these are my top 5 guys. I think I would slide Nick in here because he's a really, he's like an athlete, man. He's a safety. I think we could play him in a variety of ways. And if you listen to Jeff Ulbricht's presser or his introductory presser, he was saying he wants to introduce a defense that's never been seen before. And from what I'm seeing, now I'm not saying it's new, but what I'm seeing is it's going to be a defense where you can move anybody anywhere basically. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm not saying that's new, but I like the idea, and I think having him, you could play him down in the box. You could play him, in the deep half. You could play him in the middle of the field. You could play him at the slot probably. He could walk down and blitz. I think he would do that with this team if we were to pick him. But you already know who I'm picking. Like I said before, James Pierce Jr., I'm going to pick him at pick 18. And the reasons why, I think I stated it earlier, I think we're staying in a 3-4. And so he would be a perfect outside linebacker for us. He's big, he's long, and he can get bigger too. So there's a lot of upside there. I said before, Mykel and Stewart, they would probably have to move inside. And I'm not opposed to having interior lineman help or a presence there in general, but I just think that it makes more sense to go get edge because we have a lot of guys on the interior. Okay. And I picked him over Mike Green because honestly it was a coin flip, but I think, like I said before, the coaching staff, they wanted length, and James Pierce Jr. is a long human being. Pause. But that's not to say Mike Green is bad. So after that, Mike Green goes right after at pick 19 to the Buccaneers, which is crazy. So we'd have to deal with him, right, with Todd Bowles, who's a decent defensive coordinator. I'm not going to take that away from him. Better coordinator than head coach, in my opinion. But, yeah. And so Shamar Stewart, he slid to the second round. So we're in the second round now. Should have said that. But onto the second round, Shamar Stewart slides to 36 to Jacksonville. Alfred Collins, one of the guys that I was looking at, he goes to New Orleans at 40. It sucks. And another defensive tackle, Kenneth Grant, he goes at 43, which is 3 picks ahead of us, okay? And so when we get to pick 46 there, my top 5 here is Braden Swinson out of LSU, Princely, I don't know how to say his last name, Darian Porter out of, I think it was it Iowa? I want to say Iowa. And then Omar Norman Lott and then Ben Morrison, okay? And then my notable guys that were also there is Carson Schlesinger, I think that's how you say his name, Shamar Turner, and then Joshua Farmer. Now, I put Shamar Turner there because I think, like I said, I'm not opposed to interior defensive lineman help. I think he would be there way later on. And so I don't trade back from 46 in this situation. The player that I picked, which is probably going to be my favorite sleeper, like when I first got into this draft cycle, I went into cornerbacks first because I didn't think we would bring Mike Hughes back. We were losing D. Alford at the time. And we also moving on from like Antonio Hamilton and Kevin King. So I was like, bro, our cornerback room is light. Let me look at the corners. And Ben Morrison, I didn't initially, look into him. My initial guys were Darian Porter, Trey Amos, Azariah Thomas, and Maxwell Hairston or something like that. So Ben Morris, when I got to like look at him for real, I'm like, man, this guy, he's just, and this is not a knock on him, he's a bigger Mike Hughes. And if you watch Mike Hughes last season, Mike Hughes for us was great. So if he's a bigger Mike Hughes, you think he would offer more in coverage in terms of length and range, okay? I don't think that's a bad pick. So like I said, I'm picking Ben Morrison at 46. So like I said, he's a bigger Mike Hughes, so he's going to offer a little bit more as far as coverage range, in my opinion. He's more zone oriented. He can play man a little bit, but he's more zone oriented. Good ball skills. He could play opposite of AJ. So say we go with we facing a 3-by-1 set and we're playing cover 6, right? You're gonna single up AJ backside. And you're gonna have Ben Morrison playing quarters to the trip side, which he only has one responsibility: is you have number one up and out, and if he goes under, you zone off and you look for work, right? And now I'm just hyper simplifying it, but that's some things that we can't see because he's a zone oriented guy. He's a little bit bigger and he plays well off of AJ. Because if you have that premier shutdown corner, you want somebody that can complement him. Now, having a man-to-man corner opposite of AJ is just, that's a luxury. However, I don't think you're going to find another good man-to-man corner outside of probably Darian Porter because he's physical as hell, but he was also still here. So I'm not mad at that, but I would pick Ben Morrison because he's a little less raw than Darian Porter. Okay. And so we move on from 46. The Buccaneers, they take Isaiah Bond at 53, which is probably not even going to happen anymore because of what just came out about the whole the allegations he's facing. So I don't think that'll happen at all. Carson Schwarzenegger, he goes to Philadelphia at 64, which makes sense because they're losing some of their guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if they take a linebacker to develop if they, decide to move on from Nakobe Dean or anybody else that's on that great defensive front seven. Okay. And then Shamar Turner, he goes right before us at 81. And so now we're in the third round. We're at pick 82. So the guys that are available here are Omar Norman Lott, Braden Swinson, Princely, and Joshua Farmer. And so I don't move off of this pick either. So I'm going to pick Omar Norman Lott because, like I said before earlier in the video, that I would love interior presence as far as drafting, because this guy, he's a designated pass rusher from the interior defensive line position. Okay, and I would, hey, interior defensive linemen that are good pass rushers, those feel like a premium because, in my opinion, also Bill Belichick, he alluded to this, good pass rush, it starts in the middle. You have to push the pocket back. If you can get pressure up the middle, every play that the offense runs is dead because the integrity of the pocket is created from the middle. So if you can disrupt what's going on in the middle, you're going to win a lot of games, especially, and be a really good defense as well. So I think we will pick him in the third round at pick 82 because he's a DPR or designated pass rusher. Like I said, we could use him on stunts and games, all of that. I'm not saying he's going to be the looper, but I'm saying he can, take the attention of one of these guys and have a guy like Leonard Floyd or James Pierce Jr. come around and, oh, now he's in your face with a free hit. Okay. And he's very quick. He creates a lot of interior pressure. Like I said, I think he's at the top of the league or the top of the SEC, maybe even the country as far as getting pressure. So this is a really good pick for us. Okay. And even though I don't think he'll be here at 82, I think he'll go a little bit before. If he were to fall to a situation where we could pick him up, I would be pounding the table for him, especially since he visited us, because that lets me know they're serious about this pass rush. Okay. And so moving on from number 82, Joshua Farmer, he goes to 87 to Green Bay. Princely goes at 89 to Houston, which I like the move in my opinion. And then Braden Swinson out of LSU, he goes to 94 to Cleveland. There's really nobody noteworthy at 118 that I saw, but I do have just a top 5 just based on the name value. I didn't necessarily go into deep dives on these guys, but I've heard of them, right? And so my top 5 here is Jalen Reed, Demetrius Knight Jr., JJ Pegues, and Seth McLaughlin. And I think at this point there were 2 guys that I was really interested in, which is JJ and Seth. And I was interested in Seth because I know we just got rid of, well, we didn't get rid of Drew Dahmer, but we let him walk. So I think we would actually use this draft to address that replacement, not in the early rounds, but in the later rounds. And JJ, he would also be a great complement on the interior defensive lineman to what we have right now. And so this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to draft JJ first, but I ended up drafting Seth on accident. But what I did was I traded back up. So I took Seth. He would be the Drew Dalman replacement because I think he would be a decent draft pick value for where we get him. So I'm picking Seth right there at 118, and then we're going to trade back up. I'm going to take 137, and I'm going to take a 2026 fifth round pick, and we're going to trade back up to 120, which is just 2 picks later. And we're going to draft JJ Pegues. He's a great run stopper. He can line up anywhere. He's kind of like a Grady Jarrett to me, but a little bit bigger because he can line him up anywhere. You can line him up on the outside, inside. You could probably shade him if you, and I wouldn't shade him, but if you probably want to, which I won't agree with, you could probably shade him, which means you're going to put him right over the center. And he's more of a developmental pick because there's like a lot of questions around his motor. So if you can get him to play high or play at a high motor and really develop him as a pass rusher too, I think he'll be a great pick, especially at what, 120. So that's a great pick for us. And then we're using one of our last picks in the 7th round. I didn't know where to really go with this one, so I was just thinking, what do we need? And so I came across quarterback, and I was thinking, if we're really going to get rid of Kirk Cousins this summer, if we are, then I think we would draft a quarterback in the late rounds. And my pick for this would be Seth Hennigan. Guys that were available were like Riley Leonard. It was Seth Hennigan. I think it was really only between those two that I was actually considering, but there were a few quarterbacks available, and the only 2 guys that I were considering were Riley and Seth. I think Will Howard was available too. Seth Hennigan was my guy because I've seen him up close and personal for 4 years rather, and he's not a bad passer. I think we have some good upside with that. Okay, so if we could just develop him and get him to adjust to the NFL speed, we'll be fine with him as a quarterback too. So that's really all I have right there. All right, so to highlight the picks once again, at pick 18, after we traded back, we got James Pierce Jr. At 46, we got Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. 82, we picked Omar Norman Lott. At 118, we had Seth McLaughlin out of Ohio State. And then once again, we traded back up to pick 120 to get JJ Pegues. At round 7, we picked Seth Hennigan. And we also threw in Arian Smith for the UGA fans because that was our very last pick at 242. But really only the first about 5 out of 6 really mattered in my opinion. So the last pick is like kind of okay, we just picking somebody at this point. Probably just a camp body. So of all of the mock drafts I've done, I feel the most comfortable with this one because I took everything into account. I didn't just prioritize one side of the ball, even though I think that's what we might do. So I did. It's defense heavy, obviously, because that's our main weakness. But I also took care of a backup quarterback. I got an interior offensive lineman. I threw in a receiver. I don't know if he really would make the team. I don't know. I didn't watch Arian Smith. I just picked somebody, like I said. So I feel good about this one. I might do just like one more just for Twitter, like right before the draft starts. If y'all did enjoy this video, please be sure to like and subscribe for more. I do upload Falcons content. I will be uploading more. So I'll see y'all later next video. Goodbye.